stand around and do this by hand. I just want to finely dice this stuff. And the pulsing action is much easier. There, we're just about got it here. Come on. There we are. You want to pulse this rather than to grind it because you'll get mud otherwise. All right, enough, enough. Now, into a hot frying pan. Almost hot. Remember the rule I told you, don't put oil in the pan until it's hot? That's just about right. We're going to add a bit of olive oil to our pan. Now this is something, again, that you're going to keep for the week. It's a seasoning agent called a mirepoix, or a blend of vegetables. We have 3 vegetables in the pan. We're going to saute these, along with, of course, now you'll understand what I'm talking about. I need some garlic, right? So what do? Well, I reach in the refrigerator, haul out my garlic. Look at this, all chopped and ready. Throw it in the pan. I am set. You see? That's how I want you to cook. Relax and enjoy your food. Now, the other thing I need is a bit of the herb blend in order to make a good mirepoix. Yeah, and I'll put in a good stiff pinch of this. Saute this over high heat for, I don't know, it's going to take you 5 or 6 minutes, I suppose, until you get something that looks like this. There, I'll trade pans with you. And we're ready now to, to really enjoy our cooking, because when we come home, all of this stuff is ready, and it's in the refrigerator. And all you have to do is open it up and get started. You know, baking bread is one of the most wonderful things you could possibly do. If you have a machine that has some power to it and some stamina, you can do wonderful things with bread. Remember now, bread is one of the oldest food products we know. Look at this. I can even grind my own flour. No, I don't expect you to do this every week. I know that. But you can have a great deal of fun. Here, let me show you how this works. Here's a grain mill. There we go. A grain mill. I'm using just regular whole wheat. I think I need that a little bit finer for flour. There you are. Or if I want to make a coarse grind for a good whole wheat bread. There, you see? That's terrific. I love it. I love it. My uncle Vic, you know, my Lebanese uncle, is a great bread baker. He's had one of these machines since, good Lord, when was I? I was 7 years old. I'm 48 now. How long ago was that? Well, that's the first time I saw one. He's baked bread with us for years and years and years. I'm not going to make a whole wheat bread for you. I want to make a classic French bread. And this machine takes all of the work out of it for you. Here's what you do. We want into our bowl 2 packages of yeast, and I use one that's quick rising, that sort of thing, so that you don't have to stand around a long time. 2 1/2 cups of tepid water, and tepid means it's just barely warm. All right. Now we're going to put on our flat blade. Oops! I better turn on the bowl first. This arm will move the bowl up and down for you, and it holds everything tight, so you can just do anything you want. I just love it. All right, so we have 2 1/2 cups of warm or tepid water, 2 packages of yeast, and now we're going to take out the flour. We have, and I measured this out very carefully, I'm using a scale, because if flour is fluffy, it's lighter, and if it's packed down, it's heavier. So we weigh it in order to get exactly the right amount. I want 2 pounds, 3 ounces for 2 1/2 cups of water, right? Now, I want to make a sponge. So after your yeast dissolves, add I add 4 cups of the flour. Now this is the total amount you're using. You're using 2 pounds, 3 ounces, but I'm going to add 4 cups to start with because I want to make a sponge. And what that means is that you just whip the blazes out of the flour and the yeast and water in order to make gluten. Gluten is the gooiness. There we go. There we go. Just let that go. After about 10 minutes, the flour, well, you're not going to believe this, but it is the truth. You see how sticky and wet that looks? After 10 minutes, this will begin to pull away from the side of the bowl. I've already done one. Let me show you what happens. I've already finished one for you. I just let it beat for 10 minutes, and at the end of 10 minutes, here we go. At the end of 10 minutes, the batter will have converted to gluten. You see how sticky it is now? But watch. You see, it pulls away from the side of the bowl. You see? Now you know you have gluten. You see, it doesn't stick like that at all. Now you add to that 1 teaspoon of water and about a teaspoon of salt. A little bit of salt in this. You know, this has no oil. A good French bread has no oil or shortening in it, so it's very low in terms of fat calories, you see. and very low in salt. I use only a teaspoon. Now then, add slowly. Here, let's put on the neat thing now. Whip this up. This does all of the work, and it allows it to turn to gluten. In the old days, you had to do it by hand for 2 days or something. I'm exaggerating. Now, I'm going to transfer my blades because this machine has something that is called a dough hook. And a dough hook looks like something like old Captain Kidd used to have on his arm, you see. And it turns the dough around on itself. I'll show it to you. So we'll put the dough hook on now. I love to bake French bread. Whenever I get into a fight with Jason, you know, if I get into a fight with Patty, I'm in trouble. I have to buy flowers and all sorts of things. And Channing, of course, has other needs. But if I get into a fight with Jason, I make him a batch of French bread, and everything is healed. Now, the dough hook, you see, is going around. It's going around in 2 different directions. It's going this way, and it's also turning. So the dough hook is going to knead in the rest of our flour. The bag from which I took the 4 cups, you see. Just slowly let that work in. And you don't have to worry about this. You can pour a glass of sherry and watch it do all the work. It's a wonderful device. At the end of, about 10 minutes of kneading, after it works in all the rest of the flour, you see, let me show you what you have. I have one already here for us. It's wonderful to make bread in a hurry and without any pain. I allowed the bread dough, whoops, come here you, it's fighting me here. There it is, it's alive. I've let this rise once under a bowl. So I just put the bowl over the top, and then I punched it down and let it rise a second time. So now we're ready to go. We're going to cut off I've got a little water on my board here. I'm using a chunk of marble because it's very easy to deal with bread that way. I want to cut off, there we go. I want to cut off about so much dough and roll that down on a chunk of marble. There we are. And then I'm going to make an old-fashioned looking loaf. See? There we are. Now, I'm not going to put this on an oil baking sheet. I'm going to put it on a sheet with some cornmeal on it. There. You see, what I want to have, there we go. What I want to have is an oblong looking loaf. Okay. And I need some cornmeal on the tray. Cornmeal is going to act like little ball bearings so that the bread can breathe underneath. And we'll line up. This will make about 3 loaves, the batch that I've just done. The other thing I want to tell you about is that you can make it look a little more country style if you put some flour on it. Just kind of rub it with a little bit of flour. Then when you cut it, when you make a slice in the top of the bread with a very sharp knife, this will open up as it rises, and you'll have a very interesting looking old French loaf. Now, let this rise then. This will be the 3rd rising, of course. Let this rise until the loaves are large and ready to bake, and then put it in a 450-degree oven. I know that sounds a little hot for you, but it works. And we're going to bake it for about 25 minutes or so. In my oven, I have used a pan of hot water at the bottom, just about 1 inch, you see. I want to have a little steam in it so that I get a wonderful crust, because it's the steam that makes the European bread taste so wonderful. There we are. That isn't always necessary. You get a very nice, a nice loaf in a convection oven because it's very even, but I like some steam. The other thing you might want to do, consider using whole wheat breads, all sorts of breads, and you can do the whole process just with the dough hook. But if you want to make a batter first, such as I did for French bread, then you want to use the flat blade too. There it is, bread, and it doesn't take long. Okay. Now, one of the great food products in America is hamburger. And you realize that you're paying your butcher 33% more than you should be paying for meat. Well, I know it's his game, but it's his business, but you're buying so much fat that it's simply unhealthy. And I don't want you to do that. I want you to make your own hamburger. And if you have a good machine, then it's easy to do. Do you remember in the old days, your grandma had one of those, the pain of it all, and you stand there and crank and crank and crank and crank. There's no point in doing that anymore. So here's what you do. Buy a good chuck roast, a big one, you see, and trim it out. Get rid of all of the fat. Trim off the meat. There we go. And leave the fat for somebody else. You don't need it. Just trim out all the good meat and then save, of course. Don't throw away a thing. You know that. You know me better than that. Save the fat. See, I'm getting, there we go. Oh, that's enough here, friends. I've already cut up a whole bunch of this. Save the fat for soup stock. And no, I don't want you to eat the fat. What I'm saying is that when you make the soup stock with the bones and the fat will congeal, and after you refrigerate it, and you can get rid of that. But it does flavor the stock. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to find some very lean meat in this way. We're going to trim it ourselves. Let me show you what happens. You see all of these scraps that the butcher gets off of the meat? Do you think he throws these out? Come on. You know what happens to them? It's all ground up in a hamburger, because hamburger can be 33% fat and still be legal. You don't need that. You don't need that. We want to get rid of salt and fat in our diet, so here's the solution. Grind your own. Now, the biggest problem is that you have to decide whether or not you want to grind it fine, you see, with a fine blade, or whether or not you want to grind it coarse. I like mine coarse. So here's the knife that goes in this device. Put in the knife first, then the plate, and we'll hook it up right now. And we can grind our own hamburger and nothing flat. And it tastes so much better if you ground your own. It's very fresh and good that way. There we go. Now, in order to do a lot of this at once, I have a tray. Isn't this a kick? You see this? Just slide it on. Isn't that wonderful? So that I can put a whole bunch of stuff in there at once. There we go. And I'm going to begin. Let's get a bowl here. And we're ready. This thing will practically do the work itself. You don't have to worry about a thing. And if need be, well, you can always use a little plunger. There we go. You see, you're getting very lean meat this way. My kids don't need a lot of fat in their diet, and they do love hamburgers. We do so many things with hamburger in our culture that it's just a shame to realize that that's our fattest meat. Did you know that? And don't pin it on beef, please. Let's be realistic. It isn't beef that we're worrying about. If you trim beef of fat, you're just fine. So please do that. All right, that's enough to get us started. Now, what am I going to do? Well, I have a couple of recipes for you. Here's a bowl. We'll grab a bit of hamburger, and I want to add to that some rice that's already been cooked. There. What have I done with the rice? Here it is. This dish goes back to colonial times, and it's a great dish for kids. Sometimes in our time it's called porcupine balls or something like that. But in the old days, this dish was called beef olives. You mix rice, cooked rice. This is cooked rice with hamburger, and a bit of salt and pepper. And you can put in any kind of herb you like. You know, a little oregano would be great, or some basil. And if the meat is too dry, don't add animal fat, add olive oil or peanut oil. Now, mix up a ball. You can add an egg if you like to hold these together. Mix up a meatball, something like this. And we have what the colonists used to call a beef olive. No, I do not have the answer. Don't even ask. I don't know why they call it an olive. I researched that for weeks. I can't figure it out. But in any case, it's very delicious. The other thing you can do is mix up your favorite batch of meatballs. I'm going to add a little pepper and some salt. What have I done with the salt? Who knows what I did with the salt? Here we are. A little salt and pepper. If you'd like an egg, that would be fine. We can throw in one egg. And if you'd like some grated cheese, you can do that. Let's do that, huh? Some cheese and some oregano. That would be delicious. I don't see any more cheese. Here we go. We can add some garlic. Do you remember? I've already told you that if you're ready, you see the garlic's already cut up. Isn't this great? You can cook like crazy when you come home. Grind your own hamburger for the kids. And let's try some oregano here. Rosemary, oregano. Mold these into balls. Mix this all up. Mold these into balls. And then we're gonna put treasures in the center. And by treasures, well, I'll show you. These are going to be meatballs with secret centers because they're fun for the kids. And here's what we can choose. You can make a meatball and there we go. Fold of a big meatball in and put a hole in it with your thumb in the center here, see? And then slip in a cube of cheese. Won't that crack them up? Gee, Dad, how'd you get the cheese inside the meatball? Bake that. Or you can do one with an olive. Here's a black olive. That's fun. You see, don't tell the kids what they're going to be in the middle. Don't let them know. But it's fresh hamburger. It's very little fat. You can also use chopped bacon and mushrooms. I have 4 different kinds. Well, they're in the oven. I put mine in a convection oven. No, I didn't brown them. I didn't brown them in a frying pan. I'm trying to avoid fat. You were listening, remember? So I didn't brown them in a frying pan. I put them in a convection oven. Well, let me show you. You've got to understand what that is. A convection oven has a fan inside of it. Your own oven will work fine, but it won't cook as evenly as a convection. A convection oven has a fan inside. Well, let's see.